said the Spirit that has dressed himself in Gideon and empowered the Israelites in the battle. We have no king in Israel but Yahweh. We have no one we honor, that we bring glory to but Him. And that idea that we look down there, we see it so often. We have the internet dating sites. As if you can find the person, your soulmate. Some people sit in their cards that pray that God brings me that soulmate who will complete my life. And we're all looking for that prince who will ride in, sweep us off our feet, and we'll live happily ever after. He doesn't exist. Only Jesus. We look to political leaders as if they are the ones to answer our problems or they're the cause of our problems. And the problem in America is not who's in Washington. It's who's not in our hearts. And that's no longer in our laws and our wills. That we need leaders that would tell us to cry out to God, who would repent for what we have done. And it's the arrogance not of a political party that is our problem. The arrogance so that we are no longer a people who honor God. And that our only hope is Him. There is no leader, no matter how angry, blustery, belligerent, who can deliver us. We need to put our eyes on Jesus. And Gideon did that well at this point. He put his eyes on, said, no, don't look to me. Don't look to me. Look to Him. For He is the one that we honor in our world. It's interesting, the Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain, is having her 90th birthday, April. I think April, 25th, something, 20-something. And she has put out with the church, not the church, Anglican church, but with church publishers, a short publication to be distributed all across Great Britain. And it talks about the servant queen. And in it quotes the queen that says, the king I serve is Jesus Christ. The king I serve is Jesus Christ. And encouraging a nation in commemoration of her birthday to look to Jesus and to honor Him. That's who we need to look to. That's the King of our lives. And we who are in ministry and maybe in a leadership, we never can have you look at God. Sometimes they have the advertising in the corner where they have those big arrows where they're just pointing back and forth at that for something new, pizza place or something that's opened up, and they're just there and just waving this arrow to draw your attention. Well, that's what our purpose is, who are in any leadership. We're just to wave the arrows to point you to Jesus. Because if anything had happened, it wasn't us, that we were just there. We were just what the Holy Spirit chose to use to hopefully faithfulness in that process. Because it's not us, it's Christ in us. And Gideon handled well this first part of it as he turned their eyes to Jesus. So we have no king in Israel, no earthly king, but only God on His throne in heaven. But then we see that danger, and there's a mortal battle for your soul that goes on every day. But we live in this world in which we want to be first, idolized. We live in a country that has made idolatry of self the purpose for life. And it's a battle that you have in your soul. And we see Gideon in the second part of this, didn't take that, but wouldn't have others look to him. But there's that danger that Gideon looked to himself. And as it says there in verse 24, and Gideon said to them, okay, I won't be your ruler. But we'll see, he wanted everything but that. But he said, let me make a request of you, every one of you, give me the earrings from the spoil. Now, in a battle in those days, as part of the fruit of victory, and as part of the wages for the army, they could have the spoils of the people that they had defeated. And so imagine close to 135,000 of those there. It's probably why Ephraim was mad that Gideon didn't call them in first in the battle, because then they wouldn't have the full rights to the spoils of the battle. And part of it, so they had all of the cloaks, all See, nothing new in fashion. I know they have tattoos as well, but they have gold earrings. So all of these gold earrings, some 120,000 or more. And he said, well, let me have those. And so it says in verse 25, well, they said, we'll willingly give them. They wanted to honor Gideon. And so they spread a cloak. Every man threw in it the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the gold earrings that he had requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescent ornaments, the pendants, the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were around the neck of their camels. Now, 1,700 shekels is over 40 pounds. You know, today this is $1 million of gold given to Gideon as honor of him. And also with that, the crescent that the kings wore. Why did they wear a crescent? What was that about? Well, the crescent moon, was the symbol of Baal, Moloch. And thus, he wanted to wear those ornaments they had that were the symbols of Baal. That's why in Allah's symbol is the crescent. Allah is not the true God. The true God is triune. That Islam directly ties back to the gods of Baal and Moloch. That's why the moon is the symbol. Gideon, why do you want to wear that? And the purple robes. So then Gideon, this humble man, this man who thought the least of the least, now goes around dressed as purple. You know, he's like this very ordinary Clark Kent, who has now been called to get supernatural power to be Superman, to set people free, but he doesn't want to go back to being Clark Kent. So he wants to go around dressed every day in Superman clothes. Oh, there's Gideon. Oh, there he is, Superman. He's the one who saves us. And that battle to make it about me, a battle of the pride of life, Gideon lost. He lost. And he wanted, and he found that God had taken him and used him. Lord, wonderful. But the glory is the Lord. And there's something that wants it about us, something that demands everything be about us. And that we are most important. And our church or anyone on the road, or business or family, it ought to be about honoring us and wanting to go around dressed in the Superman cloak, always getting that honor and that glory. That's what must die of us. There was a man named Ashley Brilliant who had a business in the 1970s in America. He would scrawl out these sayings on postcards and very popular. And here's one of them. He says, all I ask of life is a constant and exaggerated sense of my own importance. All I ask of life is a constant and exaggerated sense of my own importance. That's where Gideon was. And so he had this gold melted down and made into an ephod. See what it says there. And Gideon, verse 27, made an ephod. Well, an ephod in Israel is what the high priest wore. It was this breastplate that would hang over his neck and cover his chest. In Israel, in the high priest, it would have 12 stones value representing the tribes of Israel. It had 2 stones on it, the Urim and the Thummim. And the high priest then, he was the key man who represented the people to God and represented God to the people. And then when they needed to know as a nation the will of God, the high priest would pray and one of the stones would light up as to what God's will was, yes or no, in terms of battle. So the chief priest was a key instrument in their discovering the will of God as well as leading them in the worship of God. And so Gideon, though, made an ephod for himself. And you can imagine these 40 pounds of gold now in this beautiful ephod. And it says there that they put it, verse 27. And they now bowed and sought God's blessing to the ephod of Gideon. It says that in verse 27 that Israel whored after the most intimate relationship in life. That's why the picture of God as Father, that intimacy of a father and a child. That's why that imagery of marriage with us in Jesus. That He is the bridegroom, we are the bride, whom we honor the bridegroom and to honor Jesus. And that when we give our worship to someone else, it's like we're sexually giving ourselves in unfaithfulness, in adulterous relationships to someone else. And Gideon was an instrument of the people of Israel's being polluted rather than the purity of their love and of Jesus and honoring God in their lives. And that the tendency we have to look to even religion as if in baptism or in communion or in obedience to the church or inside an icon or some statue, that we can be connected to God. You know, we were in Crete on Pentecost, which is Greek Orthodox Church, and we happened to be there on a Sunday on the day of Pentecost. So we went into a church there to just observe, and it was Pentecost. There were actually news cameras out there because it was a big day as a church, and many of the leaders of the church there leading in their worship. And we came in and sat in the back, and they had there, right as you come in, this icon of Mary lit up on the ground with a glass over it, very beautiful. I think it was gold beaten out. And we watched as everyone who came into that service, and their services go for an hour, so people just come and go. Everyone that came in kneeled before Mary and kissed. How abhorrent that would be to me. How could you make this about me? When it was all and always about my son. And this place that we have to make icons or statues, or to think that to them, you know, one of the things the Catholic Church is dealing with right now, it's so expensive to make priests, or make saints. So expensive to make saints. Well, you know, really, it's a gift. But a saint, and what is it? What a saint is? A saint is someone you can pray to who will then go to God to get favor. Now, why do we do that? Why do we think it's anything but through Jesus? Because there's no mediator between God and man. It's the man Christ Jesus. But the Protestant Church does that as well, often as well. That temptation we have to substitute ourselves for Jesus. There's a man ministry who's been significant in India, in Asia, established a mission, who has this, talked about the revolution in missions, and just about India's problem is they need Jesus and the gospel. That's the answer to India's problem. And just calling us to live this austere life so that everything we have could be devoted as much as we could to missions. And he was in our house at one time when we brought him to the church to share a very powerful testimony and call to Christ. And he wouldn't let his children drink Coke or anything like that. Not because out of health, but because they only needed water, and the money they would have spent on soft drinks, they could give to missions. That's the kind of life he had. Well, now a generation later, there's scandal with him. And the very sons that he's there, and great challenge that he's been corrupted, that he has been using his influence to promote his family. I'm so abhorred at it. Just so, how could this be? And then I saw a video of him on YouTube, and he's established his own denomination of churches in India. I mean, he needed to do that to be able to bring the money into the country. And there he is, in this bishop's big, beautiful garments, this mitre on his head, sitting on a throne with the priest that he was ordaining coming, bowing before him and kissing his ring. How does this happen? It's that battle inside you and me that we ought to be on the throne. If not Jesus, okay, we'll have him. We ought to be worshipped. That's why in our lives great places I learned driving was in Vietnam. Vietnam, almost everyone has a motorcycle. And so they have like 10,000 motorcycles on a lane built for 40. Okay? And so they're all in this continual battle. It's kind of like Bangladesh and Dhaka, all in this continual battle. And they're being cut off just 10 times between here and the light. But no one gets mad. You got me up? Okay, you got that spot. Just go on. And if you waited for anyone else, you'd never get there anyway. So just this continual process. But it never got personal. I just watched it. There was this fascination because we went in America, that was happening. We'd have so many road rages. They drive. It's not about me. It's just getting there. You got the spot? Well done. Well, okay, I'll get you next time. But so and there's that humbleness that Gideon is stealing from God and making his own and making it about himself. There's a Protestant pastor in one of the largest churches in America in Texas. We have all of this prosperity that God wants you. All your dreams are there, and you can have them. Just believe it, and they will be yours. And he is showing us an example that God does give our dreams. He says, when I was a child, I dreamed of having a house big enough for elevators. He just bought a $10.5 million mansion in Houston that has 3 elevators. And now he's going to people, see, as a child I dreamed of a home with an elevator. And now God has brought that all out of the mouths of people who think somehow through him we have the secret of how to have success in life. We continually find that battle going on in ourselves, or who the glory belongs to. Most often the battle is ourselves, and the danger of looking to someone else rather than to Jesus. Gideon, as part of this also, though he didn't take the title king, he did wear the purple robe. There he is. But notice also what happened down in verse 29. Zerubbabel, son of Joash, went and lived in his own house. Now Gideon had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, and also bore him a son, and called his name Abimelech. And so here we have many wives, 70 sons, and it's clear they're not adopted, they're all his. And that one of the things God warned about in Deuteronomy, he says, you're going to want a king, I'm to be your king, but you're going to want a king. But when you get a king, one of the things you're never to do, your king is not to take many wives. As a matter of fact, your king is to copy the law in his own hand and to read it every day, to order his life onto the honor of the law of God. And also, as he not only had his wife, but he also had, it says there in verse 31, a concubine. She wasn't Jewish. She was from another country, a foreign country to Israel. And she was just there for his sexual enjoyment, as if the rest weren't enough. And once you set your goal on something apart from Jesus to satisfy you, it will never be enough. Never. And you know what he named his king? It says his son. He named his son Abimelech. Now, Abimelech is a compound word. It's made up of the AD, the Av in Hebrew. Hebrew is the name father, or the word for father. And then Melech is the title, or means king. And so he named his son, my father is a king. My father is a king. And yet he never raised him. He was raised in a foreign land by, probably, as we were doing those days, the woman would have stayed with her parents. And his father only came for the sexual indulgence, not for a son. And Gideon brought what we think in our country would bring blessing to his children. He brought them peace. He brought them prosperity. He brought them a name for themselves. My father, really not a king, but look at him. See, he's still got those Superman photos. Because that's who he is. never have them build the foundation of their lives in Jesus. And that's the whole purpose of life. The whole purpose of life is to pass on to our sons, our daughters, our grandsons, our granddaughters, to the next generation, to build their lives on the foundation of Jesus. And Gideon failed at the most important point of life for our first responsibility. In marriage is to our spouses, and if God blesses us in the fruit of that marriage to our children, then it is our first priority in our lives, and everything else comes after that. And Gideon utterly failed. And we are failing in our country as well. We are not giving our children a spiritual foundation, and the tendency, even inside church, is to have tiger moms and that. We think that through education, and through achievement, or through their children being the best, and they're in the best schools, and they have the best training, and they go and serve and give in mission and things like that, because they can get into the best colleges, because that's the kind of character that others that they will say they want, and they have the highest of the grades, because we think that in that we have given them success. And we have not given them the foundation of Jesus. My generation, the 60s and the 70s, we tore down all the foundations that this country was built on. And then we had nothing to give our children to build on, or their children. And we're bearing the fruit of that. And your responsibility is more than anything else, not only to yourself and to the church, but to the next generation. That they might have the foundation of Jesus, that our children and our youth are honored in that place. And of his 70 sons, after Gideon died, 69 were murdered. Abimelech, never raised for the father that welcomed him into the house, said, well, now that Gideon has died, now that my father has died, we'll be wiped out, because we weren't in his natural family. So we need to establish ourselves in our rule. And so he got the people behind him and led a plot in which he murdered 69 of his 70 brothers, so that no one can have the legacy but him is going on